My dad had a guy down the road work on his motorcycle a while back. Since he also raises pit bulls, I'll just call him Pitbull. My dad was hanging out with him one day talking about bikes when Pitbull told my dad this stuff. While he had my dad's bike in his garage, he went into there one day and noticed my dad's handlebars turned completely towards the floor. They had been locked in place. He works on bikes for people a lot and spends a lot of time in the garage. Tools, motorcycle parts, and other things fly across the garage all the time. Years ago, his buddy was murdered, and in his will, he left his motorcycle to Pitbull, who just parked it in his garage and left it. One day, his buddy's dad came by and said he wanted his son's bike, and Pitbull said he'd have to think about it. He talked it over with his wife and decided to give him the bike. He went out to look at it, and in the fine layer of dust that had built up on it, someone or something had written, "Don't do it." So he didn't. Another time my dad was over, Pitbull told him something more serious was going on there too. One night he and his wife were in the dining room eating dinner, and there was a loud boom that shook the house as if it had been hit by a cannonball. He jumped up and started looking around. The neighbours hadn't heard it. A big clear bubble floated through the house, through him and the back door, and out the backyard where the pit bulls he raises were. They immediately started barking as it hovered over the grass in front of them. Pitbull pulled out his cell phone and recorded it. In the bubble is what appears to be the head of a gargoyle-like creature. He showed the video to my dad, who said you can see it perfectly, but I've never met Pitbull, let alone see the video. As it turns out, his ex-wife was a practicing witch, and when they split up, she told him she had placed a curse on him. He's sure that's what is causing this haunting. Y'all, I'm not entirely sure about this place. It's a hotel that's only like 3 years old. Nothing was really here before that, though I don't know the history of the area. When I first started here, I heard one guest apparently killed themselves in their room, but I've never confirmed it. And really, so far, nothing crazy has happened to make me question it. But the other night, I was making my rounds emptying the full public trash cans. I went up the elevator to check on those cans just outside of them, and after checking one, I went back on the elevator and waited for the door to close. The door started to close, then immediately opened back up. Nobody was outside of it pressing any buttons, and nothing inside was blocking the door. Could be just a mechanical glitch, so I passed it off. I did get a chill when it happened, as if there was a ghost there, which I do get when there's a ghost around, but it could have just been freaking myself out too. Those chills are very similar. But then tonight, I was in the break room bathroom. I use it frequently. While in there, I've heard the people above me in their room moving around, the people in their room on the other side of the wall moving around, and people in the public bathroom on the other side of the other wall flushing the toilet or slamming the toilet lid. My wife is the only other person working with me on third shift, and employees are the only ones who can access the break room through the laundry room door, which is keycard activated. I've even heard her come into the area before looking for clean towels for guests. From the bathroom, I can hear the laundry room door shut as it slams loudly. Today, while in the bathroom, I distinctly heard someone walking on the laundry break room floor and heard little things making noise. Like something being moved and tapping a table or a wall. I know these sounds well, and I'm 100% sure the noises were coming from the laundry break room. I figured it was my wife looking for towels or something for guests again. Except I never heard the door slam shut. I just figured she'd propped it open or held it until it shut quietly. When I left the room, I saw her at the front desk and asked if she had just been in that room, and said she hadn't been in there all night. What's even stranger is, someone spilled something sticky on the floor and didn't clean it up. So walking through there made my shoes sound sticky all over. But the footsteps I heard didn't stick to the floor. By the way, I did just finish mopping that area, so the floors aren't sticky anymore. Unlike those I work with, I actually do my job. Around 3 or 4 years ago, me and my girlfriend went on picnics. It was a really hot summer, So we got out of the house. We knew about the history of the place as mentioned above, but one day we were packing up to go back home. As once we were packed up, we started to head back when all of a sudden a woman in a black and white stripy top and like tan khaki trousers walked around the corner we were heading toward. But she was still 300 or 400 yards in front of us and walking towards us. She stopped, looked at us, turned around, and started walking away quicker than she was walking towards us. Me and my girlfriend thought that was weird, so we were running to try and catch up to her. Quick note, there are two paths on the way out to the entrance. We came in and another up until recently. We didn't know where it led, and now we can confirm what we already knew back then. She couldn't have used that path because you can practically see all the way down, and we would have seen the person walk down that way. But she disappeared, so we followed the path right around to the main entrance and got into my dad's car, who was there to pick us up and asked us how long he'd been sitting there. He said about 15 minutes. We then asked if he had seen a woman with a stripy top and tan trousers come out, and he said no. He'd only seen a family of 4 walk in, and there was only one other car in the car park. It wasn't until we got home and done a bit of research that we found out that a woman in her 30s to 40s had committed suicide in that forest. The description given of her when on her missing post and what she was wearing matched exactly what we had seen. So this is the one and only ghost I have ever seen. Don't get me wrong, I've seen shadows and things, but not a full apparition. This story took place when I was a kid. My dad has been a pool man for many years. One of his oldest customers decided to purchase a ranch. I don't exactly remember where. He asked my dad if he could come and fix their pool, which was disastrously maintained before we bought it. He gave my dad permission to bring us along and told us we were welcome to stay a few days to enjoy the ranch. We drove there, and I had been in charge of reading the MapQuest instructions because I never seemed to be able to sleep during car trips. We drove back a few days later after my dad was finally able to save the pool. The drive home was very long. For long stretches, the view was mostly desert, farms, and the occasional small suburban town. Unlike me, my mom and brothers knocked out almost immediately. So most of the trip it was just my dad and I talking or listening to music. I'm also a very avid reader, so I had a book on my lap beside the maps. I remember the ride had been quiet for a while because I had been reading. I had to stop because it was getting dark and my dad only let me turn on the dome lights to read the maps. No radio service and the Game Boy's batteries had all died. All I had left to do was look outside. All of a sudden, I spotted a very tall shadow on a roof. I realised there was a man who seemed to be wearing a hat, bowler or top hat, dancing and jumping from roof to roof on this suburban lot. Kind of like the scene in Singing in the Rain, which at that point I had not seen. It took a second to realise that it wasn't a normal thing to see. The houses were separated in a way where a normal person couldn't have jumped from roof to roof. What scared me the most is how at the last house, before a field, he seemed to turn around and sense me. He bowed and tipped his hat. Even though I couldn't see it, I could sense it was smiling. All I felt was dread. I turned to face my dad and see if he saw him, but he had been paying attention to the road. When I turned back, I couldn't see the houses anymore. They were way behind us. I never saw a face or any details. He was just a silhouette on the roofs. I remember the feeling afraid that it would follow us, that it could if it wanted to. I never saw something like that on our many road trips ever again. Sometimes I wonder if I imagine it, but it felt so real. The memory is so vivid as well, which always comes back when I'm watching old musicals, because the dancing reminds me of the way he moved. As a child, I grew up in an apartment building. We lived in a town with lots of history and also next door to many cemeteries. My apartment building was pretty dated, even in the 90s. Our shared laundry room was downstairs in the garage. By the age of 12, my mom would send me downstairs to do some loads of laundry when she was busy taking care of my brothers. To get to where the laundry was, you had to open a big, creaking metal gate. It was extremely loud and echoed across the large garage. Everything echoed in that garage, even when you walked in. So no matter how quiet you tried to be, your presence was always known. In other words, highly impossible to sneak up on someone in there. My neighborhood, while mostly okay, was not the safest. So I would always close and lock the gate when I was downstairs to be on the safe side. I knew no one without a key could enter, and I would hear them if they did. I could also see them as the laundry room wasn't really a room, but an open corner in the garage. That day, I was taking stuff out of the dryer. It was a holiday weekend, and I remember it was very quiet because most of our neighbours had decided to take off for the long weekend. We were the only family with kids that decided to stay. I'm folding my laundry and look up. There was a little boy bouncing a big red rubber ball in the garage with me. I remember being shocked because I hadn't heard him open the gate. I watched as he played, wondering who he was because I'd never seen him before. Then I realised something that was wrong. His ball wasn't making any sound at all. In a garage that echoed if you as much quietly sneezed. As this realisation hits me, I watched the little boy bounce his ball towards that wall. I expected it to bounce back, but it disappears through the wall. The boy runs after it and also disappeared through the same wall. I was shocked at what just happened, so I shoved everything back in the basket without finishing the folding and ran upstairs into our apartment. I didn't even lock the gate behind me. I never saw him again, but others did in different locations. So my balconies or downstairs. A little boy in a striped rainbow vest and shorts, always solid, not translucent, but would vanish impossibly fast. I'm a freshman in college. I've had more than just one paranormal encounter, but this is by far the worst. I attend an all-girls Catholic school, and it's almost 100 years old with cemeteries on campus for the nuns we have. That's not relevant to the story, but I just wanted to provide details. Anyway, it was about 10 PM on a weekday when I started getting bubble guts. I had to use the restroom, and I mean use the restroom. I hate going number 2 in the restroom on my floor because someone is always in there. Before I tell you this next part, I just want to say that I've been doing this for a very long time and never faced any problems until that day. I use the restroom in the basement. I promise the basement doesn't look like what you think it does. It looks decent and it connects from the first floor lobby via a small staircase, so I was never afraid. Not only that, but the restroom down there is pretty nice and clean. When the elevator brought me down to the basement, I walked in getting ready to do my business. When I opened the bathroom door, I noticed the stall door was closed. I was surprised because in all my times doing this, no one was ever in here besides another freshman teammate of mine who did the same. Immediately thinking it was her, I peered under the stalls to see her blue Crocs. Except there was nothing there, no feet. I figured someone got embarrassed that I walked in and picked up their feet or something like that. I decided to leave them alone, and as I turned my back to leave the toilet paper in that stall, it started getting yanked out. It was being pulled out so fast it made its container shake, making a loud noise. My heart picked up its pace, but I convinced myself that someone was in there and was now just in a rush. I left and headed towards the elevator. After I pushed the button, the toilet paper stopped. It was taking forever, and just as I was losing my patience, I heard the stall door from inside the restroom fly open. It flew open as if someone had kicked it. At this point, I knew the stairs were the smart option. The stairwell is located right next to the elevator, so I wasted no time. I opened the basement door, and just as I stepped into the stairwell, the bathroom door opened. But again, as if someone had kicked it open with enough force to make it hit the wall. My brain was telling me that it was just a person who was in a rush, but my body didn't let me turn around to check. Just as I made it up the first flight of stairs, the worst thing happened. The basement door that I had just walked through swung open again as if someone kicked it. Following that, loud, heavy, and fast footsteps were coming up after me, and they were moving quickly. I was afraid, but didn't let it get to me. I had already passed the first floor door, and I only lived on the second floor, so I started running. The other footsteps seemed to be echoing so loud throughout the stairwell. I was getting my keys ready to open my floor door. When I got to it, I unlocked the door while hearing the footsteps get closer and louder. I ran inside and bolted to my room door, the first door on the left wing. I put my back against my room door and waited. Just a second later, the same loud footsteps ran through the hall and sounded like they stopped in the dead in the middle. I poked my head around the corner, expecting to see my teammate pranking me out, but there was nothing, except the stairwell door closing. I ran to the middle of that area to look down the right wing hall, and there was still nothing. I still tell myself that it was just a person who was in a rush, and I just didn't see them. The sound of the toilet paper and the sounds of the fast, heavy footsteps haunt me when I think about them. I'm uneasy, I'm unsure about the whole incident. The only thing I'm sure about is that I'll never go back to that restroom again. During winter break, my roommate decided to bunk our beds. I was home, and she stayed on campus, so she and her cousin had done it. I was excited about it, since we've talked about it before. When I came back to school, I had the bottom bunk, which I was grateful for. Every time my roommate laid on the top bunk, the bottom of her mattress would sag from her weight. I would often put my feet under her mattress to push up, making a jump. We thought it was funny. She worked for Amazon and had the graveyard shift. On the weekends and a couple of weekdays, she would leave around 6 p.m. and come back at 5 a.m. One particular Friday night, I had returned to my dorm at about 10 p.m. after hanging out with some friends. I knew it would be empty since my roommate was long gone for work. I remember this really uneasy feeling I got from the room. I stood in the doorway staring at everything. It looked fine. There was nothing weird about it, but something just felt off. I even thought about sleeping in a friend's room, but I was too exhausted and just brushed it off as post-hanging out sadness. I changed, threw on my headphones, and before I knew it, I'd drifted off. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. I remember being cold despite always being hot. I remember looking at my room. Everything was lit up deep red because of my roommate's LED light she had put up. I was confused that they were on until a quiet moan threw me off. It sounded very raspy. It was so quiet I couldn't figure out if the noise was in my head or if it had really happened. The same uneasy feeling started creeping up my spine. My head whipped around and I was staring at the sagging mattress above me. I breathed a sigh of relief knowing my roommate was there. I put my feet onto her mattress and gently pushed it heavier than usual. Like a lot heavier. At this point I was thinking she snuck someone in while I slept. I heard the rapsy moan again and knew that it was definitely coming from above me. The sound of it really struck dead in me. It almost sounded like an old man sleeping with his mouth open. That's the best way I can describe it. When I noticed it was still pitch black outside, I wondered what time it was. When my roommate got back, the sun was usually peeking through. I reached for my phone to check the time, and when it did, my heart sunk. It was only midnight, and my roommate never got off early, let alone 5 hours early. At this point I was very uncomfortable, and I knew that I wouldn't sleep until I saw for myself who the hell was there. Even if she did sneak someone in, I would be kind of upset, so I wanted to check. I was creeping out of my bed to check. The second my foot hit the floor, the mattress above me moved. The sound of it moving wasn't any type of shuffling. It sounded like all of weight on it had been lifted. It scared me, so I quickly ran and turned around. I started crying. There was no one else in the room. I just remember feeling really defeated and empty. The whole thing felt like it lasted hours, but it was really only a matter of minutes. There was no one else awake at this hour, so I called my friends from back home since I was a few hours ahead of them. I cried telling them the story. I had all the lights on and was sitting on my desk telling them. They knew about the stairwell story and marked it up on me still being scared of that, so my brain made it up. I hung up feeling flustered and exhausted, but I didn't want to sleep. I watched TV until my roommate got back and I told her what had happened. My roommate laughed it off until she climbed up to her bunk, which is when she paused. She asked me if I had laid on it or something, and I said no. When I asked why, she said her bed was messy, and before she left for work, her bed was made. I couldn't sleep with the lights off after that. The sound of the raspy moan and the sound of the mattress really stuck with me. When I go back next year, I won't be having a roommate. It will be good, since my current roommate and I left off on bad terms. I've had other encounters, but these two were by far the worst. I'll start by giving some context. My great-grandfather bought a large plot of land in the woods of QC, where he was not only built his home, but also saved old buildings that were about to get destroyed by moving them on his land. Those buildings date from the 1700s to the 1800s. They were probably houses, as they're quite small and made out of logs. Since then, my parents, who I live with, and my grandparents have also built their homes there. We sometimes rent out those buildings as cottages, and lots of people have said that they encountered spirits in some way. I myself have stayed in those buildings overnight very often, but have never experienced anything out of the ordinary for the 18 years I've lived there. Until a couple nights ago. My boyfriend and I often hang out in one of those buildings. It's a 2-story high observatory with stairs on the outside that lead up to the second floor. We went there at about 9:30 p.m. and accidentally fell asleep on the couch at 11 p.m. I woke up suddenly at 1:30 a.m., woke my boyfriend up and prepared to leave. It's important to note that we're in the middle of the woods. My house is a 5-minute walk from there. As he opens the door, we hear a song playing in the distance. I didn't recognize it, but it just sounded like ambient elevator music. He closes the door out of fear, but I brush it off, as there's a public park not far away from here where shady people often hang out at night. Plus, we live near the river where sound travels easily. So I nonchalantly open the door again, but this time, I hear a piano playing extremely close, as if someone was playing it on the balcony upstairs. It sounded so clear. We didn't bring speakers, and there are no instruments on the second floor, so it would be impossible for music to be playing. We both heard the music. It definitely sounded like a song as it had structure, but I didn't recognize it. It was a melancholic classic composition. It sounded kinda sad. I shut the door. We could only hear it when the door was open, so it came from outside. My initial thought was it was somebody on the balcony upstairs, and at that point we're both terrified, so I call my mom to pick us up. After a couple minutes she pulls up, and when we walk outside, the piano wasn't playing anymore, and there were no signs of a person being up there. We didn't hear footsteps or any other noise, just the piano. If I were alone, I would have thought it was some kind of hallucination as I was half asleep, but the fact that we both heard it made it so real. When we got in the car, she tells us that my sibling had woken her up 5 minutes before we called, because she heard a high-pitched noise coming from outside her room. My mom also told us that when my sibling woke her up, the dog, who was usually a heavy sleeper and very calm at night, was crying. 2 days later, my grandmother, who was very active in our town's community, said that on that same night at 2 a.m., a man supposedly saw a UFO. He said he saw flickering lights in the sky and that they suddenly disappeared. Could these events all be related? They all happened in the same half hour and in the same town. I don't know if this could be helpful, but my grandmother had recently moved about 20 antique objects to the second floor, so perhaps a spirit was attached to one of those objects. I'm just having a hard time explaining where the music comes from. When I was 19 years old, I got pregnant, and my husband at the time and I were very excited. When I went in for my 10-week checkup, I was given the news that a heartbeat was not detected, and the baby stopped growing. I went home devastated, crying so much I just felt drained, exhausted. My ex laid me in bed while he went to go get me meds. I heard the door close, and after about 5 minutes, I felt someone sit at the foot of the bed, and someone else by my stomach. I was laying on my side. The person by my stomach said, "I'm sorry," nickname Grandpa called me. "I know it's hard right now, but soon you'll understand." Then he touched my face and I could smell my grandpa's cologne. He had passed away 10 years earlier. I feel him get up and I try to gather my strength to open my eyes, but I don't see him. When I look at the foot of my bed, I see a bit of a man's face. He had his back towards me, but he seems sad. I feel peaceful and fall back asleep. A week later, I'm telling my mom about my dream and what I thought it was. She asks me to describe the man sitting at the foot of my bed. As soon as I do, she starts crying and tells me I just described her father and what he was wearing when he was buried. I never met him since he passed when my mom was very young, and she didn't have any pics of him because her stepdad threw him out. On top of that, the day before my ultrasound, my dad dreamt his dad, who told him not to worry about me, that I would be fine and he would visit me to make sure. Thanks to the visit my grandpas did, I get safe, loved and strength when I left my toxic marriage. My buddy's house he used to live in with his parents was haunted. Some nights back when we just graduated high school, I would get a sense of uneasiness, but would just listen to music and fall asleep. Then after a while, each night it grew progressively worse until the last few times of staying the night were by far terroring. First they went from simple uneasiness to full-on hearing things. I would spend the night in the guest room and have music playing in my ears all night, so I wouldn't hear the sounds. Well, one night I didn't have it. I heard feet shuffling through the carpet as if someone woke up to check on me. They all slept upstairs while the guest bedroom was downstairs by the bathroom, kitchen and main door. I sat up to hear the footsteps come to the door and then stop. You can just feel it that they were peering in, but nobody was there. Then hearing the feet shuffling back up the stairs. I tried to make nothing of it, but the footsteps were loud, like someone physically was making rounds. Finally, after a few times, I mustered the courage to go spot them like it was my buddy trying to mess with me. Just remembering brings tears into my eyes. And what I saw was not my buddy, but a pair of slightly transparent feet in socks shuffling towards me, stopping mere steps away, then turning to the bathroom on the right and walking in there. I hauled ass up to my buddy's bedroom to wake him up, but he wouldn't listen. He claimed it was the wind. It wasn't windy at all. It's the rain. It wasn't raining that entire week. It's ants. Yes, the wise man has been a marvel. I gave up and was forced to return to the guest room, terrified. How could I sleep? What can I do? I prayed and prayed. I didn't have my music player at all to distract me. I would hear the rounds again, upstairs to each room, down the stairs, in the living room, dining room, then my area, then back up. But each trip they would come further into the room, watch me, and then leave. First was lingering at the door, make a round, and then just in the door, make a round, then at the foot of the bed, then at the side of my bed. I was praying, begging, pleading for God or Jesus to help me. Finally came to the last round and final time I ever laid in that bed. After it stopped at the foot of the bed, waiting, not leaving, suddenly a terrifying sensation crept throughout my body. My fucking hair on one side of my body stood on end with goosebumps, adrenaline rushing, heart beating 100 plus beats per minute, as the sensation overwhelmed me slowly from leg up to my head, as it enveloped the entire side. Then out of fear, I couldn't really move. I needed to, I wanted to, but it was like I didn't know how. As it got worse and worse, more and more intense, you just know what is happening but can't stop or control it. You feel invaded, and that horrible negative intention is outright terrifying. I eventually overcame my fear and forced my way, somehow, out of that cursed room, rushed up to my buddy's bedroom, woke him up again, Had to give him a video game of mine to convince him to stay up with me as I waited to leave. Bastard still laughs at me and tells people, lol, he thinks my old house was haunted. Fuck that. Never again. So this was my first year at the university. I was studying medicine. At the start, we were supposed to get our residence papers and other vital papers in order. I was given an address where I could submit them and register all necessary information. You have to keep in mind that I was in a completely different country with their specific rules. So I take the train and I arrive at the building. I come in and see an entire room full of people. My anxiety kicks in and I decide to ask a guy for the right direction. Suddenly out of nowhere, a guy comes up to me and asks if he can help. So I tell him about my issue and that I needed to find the right department. To this he says that he is working in this department and that he can help me to find it. One strange detail that I noticed immediately was that he had a number tag in his hand. Why would a person working in this department even need a ticket for? Was this a way to gain my trust? So we walk out of the building and he takes me to his car. You have to realise I am the most paranoid person on earth. I would never agree to upon a car ride with a stranger. As hypnotised, I sat down in the car, and now to the strange part. He suddenly asks me, "So, med school, huh?" I never mentioned anything about me studying at med school. For an even more strange reason, that thought disappeared from my mind the second it entered my head. Eventually, he takes me to the right building and department. He does not leave. It's as if he wanted to assure that I can get the help I need. I tell him numerous times that there is no need for him to wait, and he's probably busy and needs to be somewhere else. I thanked him a million times, and only then did he leave. As he's walking away, he says, "See you." Only after him leaving did I realise what had happened. I don't know what to make out of this situation. Either way, thank you, Jacob. This happened in 2007 when I was visiting India. While there are many facts that I can't explain in the story because I simply do not know how to explain them, it is most definitely a true story. One that I often share with friends and family when talking about potential paranormal encounters. Unusual people seem interested, so I decided to share it on here. You're welcome to offer theories of what actually may have happened, because to this day, it makes no sense to me. My family is from rural India and often went back to visit in the day, haven't been for a long time. During one trip, we were invited by a way extended family member to visit their home for tea and supper. My family wasn't that close to them. I honestly don't even know how we were related. However, they seemed very excited at the thought of us coming over. We assured they were just bored and interested in the family that was visiting from abroad. So my mother, my mother's sister, and I decided to go. We took a family friend with us who drove our car. It was difficult driving on the uneven rural roads. The house was quite the distance into the middle of nowhere and surrounded by farmland. The drive there took almost 2 hours on bumpy roads. There was a well and a few houses next to theirs that all looked very old and run down. They had 2 neighbours directly next to them and 3 houses behind them, but nothing else nearby. The hosts were really nice to us and showed us around some of the land during the daytime. After we spent a day there and ate dinner, they invited us to spend the night there since it was late. It was dark outside and the drive back would have been dangerous and long, so we decided to stay. It was summertime and very hot inside the room since there was no AC. Usually during times like this, people in this area sleep outside on beds called manjas. You can search it up if you want a visual. Me and my mom slept on the one right outside their house under a tree in their front yard. Not like a typical western yard with grass and a pathway, more like an empty area of nothing except dirt and a few trees before the big gate to exit their property. The others were sleeping kinda far away from us. I don't know why it was like that, but we just didn't place our manja right next to everyone else. Sometime in the middle of the night, my mom woke up gasping for breath and crying, which woke me up. I asked her what was wrong, and she said some man was just on top of her and strangling her. She seemed very panicked and scared. I assumed she must have been having a bad dream. I saw my aunt walking over with a flashlight as she heard my mom from where she was and wanted to know what was wrong. When she shined the flashlight over us, I saw that my mom had red marks on her neck. My mom still kept exclaiming that she had been strangled and was explaining this to my aunt. We were puzzled because we didn't see anyone leaving and the front gate was still locked. Unless someone jumped the gate, which is possible and maybe in the darkness I missed them leaving, it didn't make any sense at the moment. However, it really started to not make sense the next day. Before we left, we went to the house behind the one we were staying at because they were friends with our relatives. In the house, my mom saw a picture on display and instantly looked shocked. Everyone turned to look at it to see what was wrong. My mom looked back at us and said the man in that picture was the one who strangled her last night. My mom had never heard of this man before or seen a picture of him, but apparently vividly remembers him strangling her. The members of the house looked confused and said, "That's not possible. He's dead." He had recently passed away after a truck hit him on the front road of their property. I've tried to rationally think about the situation, but I have no idea what happened that night. If my mom was just dreaming this entire time, the marks on her neck and the fact that she knew exactly what he looked like before she ever saw him makes no sense.